Thanks for joining us today. It's 2 o'clock, so we're going to go on ahead and get started. My name is Dr. Tina Lewandowski, and I'm sorry that Kelly G cannot join us today. She is at a conference in Texas right now, learning more about Alzheimer's and dementia. So she'll be back next week. So I'm here with you today. Also today, we have a presentation from Dr. Carol Buller about memory keepers, caregivers as memory keepers. And Dr. Carol Buller is a clinical assistant professor and coordinator for the adult gerontology nurse practitioner program at the University of Kansas School of Nursing. As a gerontological nurse practitioner, Dr. Buller provided care to many older adults in primary care, geriatric practice, long-term care, assisted living, home settings, and in a safety net clinic. Her clinical interests include caring for persons living with dementia, weaving palliative care into geriatric practice, and advanced caregiving for adults and older adults. So we're so excited to have you with us today, Carol. I'll turn it over to you in just a moment. I wanted to remind everyone to make sure your microphones are on mute. If you have any questions, please type those in the chat and Carol will be sure to answer them at the end. And we will have the recording available within 24 hours on our website. And now, Carol, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be with each of you today, even though we're coming across many miles. And I will say many miles because about a year ago, my husband and I moved to Boston, Massachusetts. And so this is coming from Boston, Massachusetts today, where it's a snowy day. And we're staying warm inside. And today I want to talk about being a memory keeper, because that's a phrase that I use a lot with people that I know that work with persons with dementia and also with my family members. I'm a memory keeper primarily for my mother. She has dementia, probably Alzheimer's disease, and it started after age 85. And she will often tell me that she just can't remember. Now, during the past year, as I said, when we moved to Boston, and so that's a detail that she just can't remember, even though she remembered something changed. And so every time I call, we talk about that. It's a memory that I'm sure will never be encoded in her brain, like it was when we were younger children, but still it's something that I can help her remember for that time. The other thing that I have been doing while I've been in this community is I volunteer at a memory unit in a large long-term care that's close to within walking distance from where I live. In fact, in Boston, I walked through the Arboretum, the beautiful Arboretum, to get to this long-term care place. And I go and spend about 4 hours there with all the persons who do have dementia. And the interesting thing about this is that half of the people only speak Russian, and I don't speak Russian. So a lot of our communication is really through just holding hands and being together and nodding and giving, I would say, expressions from my forehead rather than my mouth, because I have to wear a mask when I'm with them. And they have become dear friends that I enjoy seeing every Tuesday afternoon. So today, let me just move on here. The questions that I'm posing today is how are memories stored in the brain, and why are memories lost with the progression of Alzheimer's disease? And is memory loss normal as we get older? And what are some of the ways that we can be memory keepers for our family members and our friends who are living with Alzheimer's disease or dementia? So my mother is now 93, and she's lived in a retirement community for the past 20 years. She and my father moved there when they were in their younger age, and they lived there for 20 years. She moved to assisted living about 12 years ago. And then, as many of you know, that during the pandemic and the lockdown, that was not easy on many people's memory. And she moved to the long-term care facility about a year and a half ago. She often tells me that she's doesn't know where she is and that she is on this journey. And she will describe how each person where she's living is in their own little compartment. And once or twice a day, they get taken to the dining car. And she doesn't know where they're going. And she always tells me that they seem to be taking good care of her, but she just wants to know where this journey is going. Now, it may be metaphorical that she's talking about a journey of life, but to know my mother, you also have to know that she was raised on the plains of India. And as a child, she traveled for 3 days in little cubicles on the train to go from the plains up to the foothills of the Himalayas to go to her boarding school. And she did that from the time she started school till when she was a junior in high school. So I suspect that this train image that she's on is very much related to a very strong memory that she still has from being a child and going on trains in India. And so we use that as to talk about, remember when you were a child and you went on the trains to boarding school. And we often talk about her memories of those experiences. The brain is an unusual thing, that's for sure. It's a miracle and remarkable computer. And so the memories get stored briefly in the hippocampus. And that's where when we make a memory, and we're making those memories all the time, it's stored in the hippocampus. And as the memories are then consolidated and sorted out and stored in different parts of the neocortex or the brain. So there's you have to think of those little filing cabinets all around the brain where memories are stored. The memories that we have from childhood are certainly the ones that are really ingrained, or they've been there a longer time. So that's why sometimes we have here so many more memories about someone being young or knowing different people from the time when they were children to young adulthood. Now, to recall a memory, the hippocampus will direct the neuron traffic back to the specific neocortex, and it brings it forth, and you can remember. But remember, in Alzheimer's disease, the hippocampus shrinks and actually loses its ability to do that. And so it's like our Rolodex has been removed from our brain, and we can't add those memories effectively, and we can't retrieve them as well, too. But normal aging and memory is, we retain our memories even as we get older. Yes, we have momentary lapses in memories. If you weren't good at names earlier, you're probably not going to be good at names now. But names, when you're trying to bring forth a name and you can describe this person by what they do, by what they look like, but you just can't bring forth that name. And then it comes back later. That's a really common thing that happens as we get older. Or going into a room and thinking, what really was I going to do? You had a purpose in going in, but now that you get into the room, you don't remember what you're going to do. So leaving the room, coming back in usually helps take care of that. Dates, some people have trouble remembering dates, or they may have something that I call the tip of the tongue. They can't remember a word, and like I said, a name, or just those things that are there, but they can remember it later. But with normal aging, we can still learn and do new things. So let's talk about some activities that engage memories. And I'm talking about things that I have used with the many people that I have worked with who had memory loss because of Alzheimer's disease or a decline in memory for some other reason. Looking at scrapbooks and using those memories from early age to young adulthood to later is really a good thing to use to engage in all those memories. Or picture albums, or even creating or having your grandchildren or your children create a memory book for you. such as I don't know if you can see this now, it's probably it is too shiny, but a memory book. It's Adeline's love book for her grandma. So I have a whole book from my granddaughter on what she's doing. Delicious smells. When I was touring a dementia unit in Belgium, and they had different times where they provided some aromatherapy for their clients there. And so before meals, they always provided aromatherapy of chocolate. Belgium chocolate seems to go together. And that helped entice people's hunger. And so they found that when they had that potpourri or whatever it was that smelled like chocolate, people ate a lot better because they remembered that smell. I think that magazines can be really helpful in looking through those and thinking about memories. And there are certain types of magazines that would be more appropriate for different people because of their life stage. If my father was still living, I would show him my burpee catalog that I got in the mail recently so that I can order my seeds for my garden. Because he was a gardener and he would probably love looking at those beautiful pictures and seeing all the different vegetables and fruits that were available. And that, I think, would be a very gratifying time for us, activity for us to do together. Music is another way to engage in memories. I have a dear friend where I go at Humor Senior Life, and she oftentimes they'll play the hits of the 60s, and it will come across on the television, but it will also have the name and who sang it. This woman can sing along with every song that comes up, that it is such a strong memory in her life that she knows the words to everything. And I find that fascinating. And so we sometimes dance together to some of those songs as they come on. I was not quite in her age group, but I remember those as being a grade schooler and an early and in like 5th and 6th grade when many of those songs came out. Dancing has always been something that for people who danced, it's a memory that is still with them. And even movement, just holding each other and moving together is something that can engage memories, that can bring pleasure. Because really what we're trying to do when we engage in memories or engage in these activities is to bring pleasure to our family member or to the person that we love or that we're caring for. I found that doing some mundane tasks like folding laundry is also kind of fun and helpful and brings back memories because it's something that people can do, and it doesn't have to be purposeful, but it truly is something that is a task that if you folded a lot of towels or diapers or whatever, that you don't forget. And so taking a big bag of tea towels and having people fold them is one of the ways to just help them remember about tasks that they did before. I also found that just reading together and reciting poetry, many people learned long poems when they were in grade school or poems from reading books, and they are still able to recite many parts of those poems. And to read those together and recite them together is really, can be enjoyable. You could do the same for scripture or for songs, those type of things, just reading and reciting together. Oftentimes I'll tell my mother when we're needing to, have some time together where it's just not her asking me about living in Boston, I will use either use this cue that I remember when we went on this vacation to California and we took the trailer, and I try and give as many details as possible. And I'll say, tell me what you remember from that trip, or just sharing some things with her of what I remember her telling us as children. Or saying, this reminds me of a story about when you did such and such, and sharing those memories with her. You may have things that you do for either persons you care for or friends to help with their memories too. This is certainly not a exhaustive list by any means. And then there are those flashbulb memories. Those are the memories that are, excuse me, I got interrupted for a moment. Those are the memories that are really, those are the memories like when President Kennedy was assassinated, remembering where you were at that time, or the memory of the space shuttle exploding in space, remembering where you were those times. Usually they're traumatic type memories, but they can also be good memories. My father-in-law used to talk about a favorite memory of learning that the World War II was over and then coming back and getting waffles. And so it was his waffle memory story that we as a family continue to hold for him. Flashbulb memories are often things that are tragic or traumatic, or things that are so sudden that they are really that they're really distinct in your memory. And because of that, they can also be very distressing. So oftentimes people will have distressing memories that they're bringing up. I had one woman who cried so often about the pictures in the fire, and she was blaming different people for the pictures in the fire. I didn't know what the pictures were. And so finally I had an opportunity to ask her daughter about this, and she said, you know, they had a fire in their house years ago and it destroyed all their pictures, like the baby pictures and the wedding pictures. And that is something that when she developed dementia, and she was still grieving over, and she always talked about the pictures, and she blamed her husband for that. And it just was really hard to dissuade her from talking about that. Had I known that, I would have been able to acknowledge that a little bit better and say, you know, that must have been a really difficult experience. And then provide the reassurance too, that the pictures are safe, or that we have the pictures in our brains. And sometimes that's helpful to know what the trigger is for those distressing memories. So when people also have distressing memories, it's important to help them find a new focus or change focus. It might be like taking a walk or a ride, maybe offering a snack, because being hungry can cause anxiety, and it can cause distress. Going to look out the window and describing certain things. Here in New England, very much in fall, I often took people to look out the window at the trees as they were changing. Listening to music, familiar and favorite music, is really something that can help with some of those distressing memories. And another thing would be to just slow down and not rush a family member through something, but just slow your conversation down, slow your movements down. I spend a lot of time sitting and holding hands with my friends on the memory unit. And one woman in particular weeps very often. She just cries pretty regularly, and she talks about mama, mama, mama. Well, she speaks Russian, so I don't know the context of this, but there's another woman who speaks Russian, and she will often go over to her, put her arms around her shoulder, and comfort her and talk with her in Russian and try and comfort her. When I'm with her, I sit and we hold hands, and that seems to help. Sometimes just comforting a person by rubbing their shoulders or their back, or just a hand massage is enough to help with that distressing memory, and then finding something else that they can do. I think it's important to always provide the reassurance that you're safe and I'll be here with you. So these are things that I've learned through my time with my friends and with the many, many persons who I've worked with that have had memory loss and dementia. And I've learned that people with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia still have a lot of memories. And I have delighted in some of the memories that they shared with me. At the turn of the century, from 1999 to 2000, I had a woman who was 107. And she said, I remember when we celebrated the turn of the century. And first I thought, how could you remember that? And then I realized that she was 107. So she was just a young girl. And she told me all about watching fireworks and people were shooting guns in the air, and it was a big celebration. That was such a gift to have her tell me that, because it was almost a living history from what she remembered as a child. Families and friends and caregivers, one of our responsibilities and the gift that we can give is to gently nudge some of those memories, and not to say, well, do you remember, but to provide some context or provide some cues to help with memories. And if you're like me, one of the things that I worry about is developing memory loss too. And so it's really important that we still care for our brains and our bodies with exercise and healthy eating and managing stress and enjoying family and friends and music and doing the things that we really, really enjoy that bring meaning to us. So those are some of the things that I've encountered in working with many people and with my family included. And it's also things that I think of in the future because I hope that I don't develop dementia, but you know, none of us chooses that course, and we can do lots of things to prevent it. And there's more things that are coming down the pipe for that too. I wonder if you have any comments. I'm going to turn off my screen here for a moment. Maybe not. Yeah, here we go. And pull up my, any questions for me or any ideas or thoughts? And is there anything in the chat here?
I was looking in the chat. I don't see anything yet.
Okay.
So we'll see if anyone has any questions here.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Valerie.
So a lot of times we see these books that you can sit down with the individual and recall memories, have them recall certain memories, and I feel like I have a desire to do that with a relative. Sometimes I'm never sure how it will be received. Are you recording my notes because you know that I won't have these memories anymore? Or what's a good way to approach someone about maybe taking on a project?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Valerie. I think just from the approaching that as, you know, I really want to share some of these memories with you, and I would love to hear more. You know, I'd like to record some of the things that are really important in your life that you remember, because it's meaningful to me. It will be meaningful to, you might say, grandchildren or whatever, things like that. So I think that's okay to say your memories are really valuable to me. Let's write them down.
Thank you.
Carol, thanks, Valerie. Carol, it looks like we've got another question in the chat from Leslie. She says, when my spouse says that he met a famous actor that he read a book about and insists it's true, how do I distract him?
That if he met a famous actor.
So it sounds like he read a book about a famous actor, and then
he met him.
He feels like that book is real, that he experienced meeting that person.
Sure. I would say, tell me about him. Tell me about him. And it doesn't matter if it's real or not. It's something that's very pleasurable to him, that it was very real to him. How would it affect, I think what you want to avoid is the argument with him that, no, you didn't read that. That was just the book. And you can also say, tell me about this person, but you can also say very gently, that must have been a really good book that you read because you learned a lot about this person.
Thanks, Carol. Looks like we've got a couple other just comments in here about your ideas to use and people appreciating your talk and
my slower cadence. That's great. I've learned
very
that from
calming. You're very calming, Carol.
I've learned that from working with many, many older people, and I just talk slower.
It's very soothing. I appreciate it too. Other questions or comments for Carol today? All right. Well, Carol, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up today?
No, I think that's all, but it's been a pleasure to be with you today and to think about some of these things and to share some of those too. Looks like Michelle Williams.
Michelle has something. Michelle?
Thank you. My mother had a form of dementia which started in her 80s, and she passed away last year at 92. And I have two older sisters. Both of them were nurse anesthetists. They were intelligent, functional people. One started having symptoms of dementia in her late 60s, and refused to get medical care or diagnosis because she didn't want to have it. And she has since been diagnosed with advanced Alzheimer's. And she lives in Maine. And at the moment, she's been mad at my other sister now. Nobody exactly knows why, but she won't talk to her or have anything to do with her and doesn't want to hear anything nice about her. And how do you, and I'm at a distance, but she calls me often every day and wants to talk, but she doesn't want anything to do with the other sister. And I'm not sure how do you handle that?
Yeah. I think I might say to her, I understand you don't want to talk about that. It sounds like it's upsetting you to talk about her. And I'd probably steer her into talking about things that are more pleasant, because you probably don't want to take on the wrath of your sister on behalf of the other sister too. But that's really hard.
Is there some way of reducing the anger? I know at one stage my mom went through a phase where she decided that her children had sold the house out from under her and taken advantage of her. That I think they kind of make up stories to explain stuff, to find somebody to blame. And is there a way of helping them get through that or let go of it?
Yeah. Most people with dementia don't respond well to psychotherapy type things. I think you just have to say, that sounds really hard, and then change the subject. Or I can hear that you're very angry, then let's change the subject.
Well, in Mom's case, it makes sense that she couldn't imagine selling her own house, so therefore we must have done it to her. But I have no idea why my one sister's mad at the other one, and they were close in the past, so it's almost like she's blaming her because she's sick, and I don't know if there's any way of resolving that.
Yeah, and if there is a sense that there may be some depression or something like that, treating those type of symptoms, because that may help calm a person if they're really having a lot of grieving, and that is resulting in depression too. Yeah, those are difficult conversations to have.
especially at a distance where you can't really
Yeah.
provide
Mhm.
care or comfort,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's hard to know what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Mhm.
I like your idea of just simply holding hands. Sometimes there's nothing you can say to make him feel better, but just being there
Yeah.
and caring for him makes a
Yeah.
difference. And that's hard to do on a telephone.
That is very hard to do. Very hard to do. Yeah. I feel for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, we have a couple other thank yous and thanks for the discussion and how helpful it was in the chat. So we'll go on ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you again, Carol, for your presentation and for chatting with us and sharing your wonderful thoughts and ideas with all of us. We appreciate that. And we will be back on next Thursday at 2 o'clock, and Kelly will be back, and we will have a new presenter at that time. And I look forward to seeing everyone next Thursday. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your week. Try
Yes.
to stay warm out there. Not all of us
Oh.
are warm right now, so try to stay warm.
Much
Thanks.
gratitude.
Bye-bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.